Why, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Josi podcast, all about leadership, mindset, self trust, action taking, and well being. So, basically, all the good stuff. I'm your host and coach Josi, and today I'm joined by Marcy, who is a spiritual business coach and an energy worker helping fellow business owners embody their business owner identity. Welcome, Marcy.
Hello, it is so great to have you here.
It's so fun already. Like, I loved just the chat we just had. But obviously, the main reason I'm like super excited to chat with you as well is because we both have such a passion for helping people to create self trust. We also love some guilt free time off and also doing the inner work. So, my first question to you has to be, how did you get to doing what you're doing right now?
hmm I feel like it's been such a journey. I'm gonna try to keep it very relevant. But a very long story short is that I have always wanted to have my own business and work for myself. Like I literally started instead applying for university with the intention of the fact that I was going to have my own counselling practice at one point, and I actually worked as a mental health practitioner for about 6 or 7 years. But I felt like there was just so many things that were really missing from the practice. I was quite limited. I worked in such a wide range of services, from like charity to private, across so many different demographics. And I just felt like I was being really limited. And at the same time, my own personal spiritual journey was growing, and it was honestly life changing. Like, I started spirituality. Oh, I started spirituality. I got introduced into spirituality after an incredibly challenging time in my life. And I was just honestly desperate. I was like, I'm willing to give anything a go. And someone I knew was a Reiki master. And I was like, I have no idea what Reiki is. I just love her as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that she has clients. They're very happy. Like, let's just go for it, see what happens. And then sort of that began progressing, deepening more and more with each day. It just ended up being sort of like a compass. Um, and as sort of like my mental health practitioner experience was going, and as my spirituality was deepening, I was like, the two need to be combined. And I was working in a corporate job, which I just felt so overskilled for. And it reached a point where I was like, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And one night I was just like, well, I need to do my own thing. So I launched my business, and I really just loved immersing myself in the community. And I have found that found an incredible community to begin with, which I think really opened my eyes up to the fact that my work is needed, but also that, yeah, this is really the way to do it. And through sort of consuming people's content, through really reflecting on my own experiences, and thinking about what I'm good at, what is different about me from other people that I can help with, was the self-trust and trust overall. That sort of really stood out to me. So I was like, well, let's go. So then I've been scaling and growing my business ever since, and now here we are.
That's an amazing story. And I kind of want to, if you're happy to do so, tap into the life changing part for you where you really got first in touch also with the spiritual kind of side of things. How has maybe even your self trust shifted in that time from before that to after? Can you go a little bit deeper on that if you're happy to share?
Absolutely. So I was actually thinking about this before we hopped on, because I was like, I feel like we're going to talk about self-trust. And I was like, how did it start? And I remember starting university, and I started going to counselling, and I was working with a counsellor, and she was like getting me to think and list all the reasons why I'm a good person, like my strengths, characteristics, and I love journaling. I've literally been a journaling girly since I was 10 years old. So I would just make lists of like why I'm a great person. Or I went on to do a counseling qualification and there was an exercise of um getting your loved ones to like use 5 words to describe you. So I sort of learn that confidence is a evidence-based component. Like we're not born confident. It's something that you need to learn and teach yourself. So it was around that time that I was doing the counseling that then also my spirituality started. Such a weird way of explaining it. That's when
No,
my
it's your way.
spiritual journey started. And I found that spirituality, along with sort of having those lists, created such a nice balance of things because I was getting to know myself on a much deeper level with the spirituality. Like I was doing, I said meditating, I got into crystals and I was doing Reiki regularly. Like those three were like my holy trinity, basically. And I found that I was able to understand myself on like a very broad, like a really broad lens, that it wasn't just like, okay, what I'm like now, but I was able to really see how certain past experiences shaped the way that I think and feel. But because I was connected inside the Reiki and the crystal energy, it kind of felt like everything was really chilled out. So I was approaching everything with a really open mind. Like there was no critical thoughts, there was no judging myself. It was just like, oh, okay, like this is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So because I would bring myself into this really peaceful mind, well, state of mind, and then I would approach these lists and I'd be like, well, you know what? Like I can really see it. So it felt like it's something that I teach my clients a lot about, of really combining like the masculine energy of doing with the feminine of being. And that's, I feel like that's what really deepened my self-trust when I began my spiritual journey, because I was listing the facts that I knew. Like I knew for a fact I was a caring person because it's all I've done. But then at the same time, I was understanding on a much deeper spiritual level, noticing my feelings that I was experiencing around, I'd say, being a caring person. Um, so it's that combination of two, as well as their inner peace that I was cultivating, that allowed me to be like, well, yeah, like this is good. And because my confidence was really increasing, it is just so linked to self-trust, that ended up then be like, well, yeah, I've shown myself I can rely on myself over and over. I show myself when something, like when I feel like shit, I will sit down and I will deal with what's happening for me. So like, yeah, I've got my own back.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was like, yeah, trust.
I can so resonate with that. I relate like so heavily with everything you said. Like just starting with the doing and the being, that is something I also learned in my personal coaching training, because I've been with coactive. So coactive literally means doing and being, because it's really about the balance between the two. If you're too caught up in doing, then you miss out on living. You miss out on life. You miss out on experiencing what it's actually like. But if you're too much in the being, you might miss out on the opportunities and the things that you can do, the things you can action, the results you can create. So I love that part, but also the part obviously around self-trust. And I just love how it came kind of slightly different to you, like through those lists and really making it clear for yourself. So for me, it was kind of different because I just went through life always being like, yeah, we do it my way. I just do what Josie wants to do. My mom would call me a dickhead, absolute dickhead. She would always say, like, you're just so determined. You just do whatever you want. And I was like, yes, but I didn't back it down to like self-trust only until I think it was like a year ago where I finally really found the vocabulary of self-trust, even though I've been doing that my whole life. But I finally found that word of, well, yeah, that's the theme. That's the theme of my life. And it took someone else actually to read through some of my life stories. And she was like, Josie, all of those decisions that you've made, they always come back to self-trust. Like they always come back to how you pulled yourself out of this. And you just were like, nope, we are doing this. We will get it done. We move abroad. We get that job. We get into entrepreneurship. We write that book. It was always backed on self-trust. And that really opened my eyes where I was like, holy shit, yes, it makes so much sense. So it's kind of like funny that you've been more conscious of it because you have been doing that practice. And for me, it was like, I did it subconsciously. And I needed someone external to be like, this is the word, like, this is the theme of your life. And I was like, yes, thank you. I needed that.
I love that so much because, to be honest, now you say that, I feel like I only really incorporated trust into my vocabulary over the last 2 years. Like it still feels like relatively recent.
Mm-hmm.
I started my business page almost 2 years ago now, and I feel like that's when I learned, oh, this thing that I've been doing and helping my clients with at my job is trust. Like that's wild, but I actually think then having that label has actually deepened it even more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you're like, oh my God, like this is what it is. It kind of feels like you understand it again on a much deeper level. You sort of understand what's happening. And I feel like it gives things more of a direction.
It really does. It really does. I feel like it always comes back down to that. Like whenever a new client comes in and you might be experiencing the same, and they're talking about like a problem they have and like they just can't solve it. And they're really struggling with something. It always comes back down to them doubting themselves. And then as soon as they start creating that self-trust, that confidence that, hang on, actually they can handle the challenge, they have the solution. They come up with their own solution. They try it. They see they can do it. And it's like, why didn't I try that earlier? Like, it's not that hard.
1000%. And that's also something that I base my business framework on, of how I help my clients, because as like everyone I've seen, even like outside of business in my years as a mental health practitioner, when I was, let's say, sticking to the script and doing what I was told to do with these clients, they were only getting so far. But then, like, I sort of scrapped it and I was like, no, these people need to, first of all, feel safe within their own being. Like, that is the first crucial step. Like, no matter what you come to me with, the first thing we're doing is working on your inner safety. And then trust. And I've actually expanded my view of trust within my framework to not only trust in yourself, but also trust in the universe, because there's seasons, there's days where you will feel like shit. Like I would say I'm a very cyclical being. So I know there's even phases within my menstrual cycle where I have days where I doubt myself. And on those days, I'm like, God, this is for you. Like, I'm not dealing with this right now. I literally just like imagine myself like handing it off, being like, right, you do this for me. And because it feels like I'm in this continuous conversation with the universe. I refer to the universe as God. That's just what feels aligned to me. And I receive, like, I'm literally getting psychic shivers right now because I'm constantly receiving these responses from the universe. And it's that one thing that allows me to then switch off more, not go into, feeling a lack of safety within my being, because I know even when there's days where I may be doubting myself, I know there's something way greater than me that has my back.
There's like a mini TED talk. I love it. How would you say that like creating that safety within oneself, but also that self-trust will help someone to truly step into their business owner identity, because that's something that was in your bio. So I'm like, okay, Marcy, what does that mean to you? How do we do that?
I love this question so much because it feels like there's just three such crucial components. So I'm going to start with inner safety because I'd say that's honestly just the key to everything. If you think about what happens within your physical body when you're not feeling safe, so you feel anxious, your heart is racing, you're very much in your head. And your brain, if left untamed for a little while, it starts running around like a wild horse. The brain, as powerful as it is, there's only so much you can trust it. So when you build that safety in your body, when you feel like you have your own back, and when, let's say, you are in your head and it's full of wild horses, you can drop into like your actual physical body, like give yourself a hug. I do a lot of womb space with a lot of women that I work with. When you can feel that calmness, you can then operate from a pure place because you're not making business decisions out of the need to make money, let's say. You're going and doing these things because you want to make money, because you know you deserve to make money rather than like, shit, I haven't sold anything all month and it's like we're like 3 weeks in, I need to go get my shit together. Or, and we can use so many different examples. When you can find that safety in your being, you can then operate in a very regulated and a coherent state. Things flow a lot more easily. Your intuition feels a lot stronger. So you're overall a lot more guided and less likely to overthink or doubt yourself. The next thing I would then say is the identity. I've noticed so many business coaches not pay as much attention to identity work as they should be. I have only learned about business identity probably over the last 10 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
I've already been in other business investments and I weren't a business coach then. And when I first found out about, the fact that you should be running your business as a business owner and not just a person that sells services, it was the biggest light bulb moment. I was like, where has this information been for the last year of my business? Because prior to that, I was telling myself I'm all in business, absolutely. I was very consistent. I was signing some clients. I did have recurring clients, but it wasn't flowing. It wasn't sustainable. There wasn't any recurring revenue. And I was just like, there is such a distinct, there's such a difference between being a business owner and someone that sells services. And knowing this now and feeling so embodied within my business owner identity, I know that I spent the first year of my business as a person that sells services. I was owning the fact that I had a business, but I weren't doing the things. So for me, when you have that identity, and this is now something that I literally bang on to also every single one of my clients, when you have that identity, you do feel more confident when you're running a business. I find that your emotional management also improves, because in the past, I would be like, oh, I feel sad. I just need to process this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take the day off. And I thought that would be, serving my highest good, because I feel sad and it's good to process emotions. Or I would be doing things that were purely intuitive. And you can't run business on intuition alone. And I am an intuition girly, but I found that when there's something solid underneath that intuition, the intuition goes a lot deeper and it actually moves with a direction that brings you the results. So for me, understanding what kind of a business owner do I want to be? Who am I as a business owner? Who am I as a CEO? Like, what are the different characteristics? How do they differ from me outside of business? And I started by having these conversations in my brain with this part of me that I created as Marcy, the CEO. And I'd be like, right, what do you think? And honestly, at first, I was a little bit terrified. I was like, oh, what if she tells me, to get to work when I really cannot do anymore? I was like, no, that's not who you are as a business owner. And I found that the conversations that I was having, I was like, she's really got my back. So that in itself then deepened my self-trust and trust into what I was doing, because it really felt like a huge step up in the responsibility I was taking and committing to run business and get clients.
I love that. How would you recommend anyone who wants to get to know their business owner identity to start? You already mentioned a couple of really good questions, and I would actually say people like journal on those. They're really, really good. Journal does get to know her. Like, how would you talk to yourself? How would you be? But is there anything else that you would recommend anyone to be doing or starting or being to step into their identity?
Mm-hmm. So one thing that really changed the game once I started having these conversations in my head was CEO reviews, because I was almost seeing this as like, right, well, I'm running a business. Like, okay, one day I'm like serving my clients, other days I'm taking a day off, whatever. But like that meeting that I was creating with myself was set with the intention specifically for my CEO self to show up, take an overview, look what's happening, see whether we meet in any goals, whether we need to change anything, what do I feel like I went well. Literally just like the most simple questions. It really does not have to be complicated. The most simple questions that your manager would be asking you at your annual review. How do you feel like you've grown? What do you feel like went well? What can improve? What area do you want to work on? Just more critical thinking into what you're doing, actually, to sort of see if things are really heading in the direction that you want it to. And it's through these regular meetings. And at first, when I started, I was doing them weekly because I was like, why have I not been doing this? So I just felt like there was so many things to review. But now they're a monthly thing where it's just time for me to really reflect and appreciate the work that I've done, but then at the same time look into the future to see what do we need to change, whether like where are my values, how have my priorities changed. That really allowed me to step up into that. And then in between those meetings, I would be having those conversations. Like once I understood what my business identity meant, how I want to be as a business owner, I would be then, let's say I sat down to do some work and I've done 3 hours. It was very intentional. I was like, yep, these are the tasks. And let's say I felt the nudge to work more. I'd be like, CEO Marcy, what do you think? Should I work more? How should I do this? What do you want me to concentrate on? Or I would begin my working day with being like, right, what are we doing? Like, what is the aim? What are the priorities? And really now talking about it out loud, if anything, it's if anyone's fearing their identity work, or there can be all sorts of things coming up when we're talking about taking responsibility, we can just see this really as a process of reflecting from a different angle that we haven't looked at it before.
That is literally so powerful. Like sometimes we just need to change the way we look at things so the things we look at change. And what I also love about this approach is such an easy way to take ownership for what has been, for what went well, but also for maybe what didn't go so well. And you can be like, okay, these were the decisions I took that led to these outcomes that maybe weren't as favorable, but it also led to the decisions that I really loved and that I enjoyed, like it was a new client or whatever it is. So it gives you insight also into, okay, what do I need to then lead forward and do in the next month? What can I change? What can I adapt? And as you said, that in itself creates self-trust because you're taking the responsibility and, like, this is my doing, but I am in control and this is what I can do to make it better or to change things up. Love that.
Absolutely. And you just got another shiver. That's what then allows me to switch off. Because if, let's say, there is a day, it's a really sunny day, and someone calls me up and they're like, let's go to the beach, and I have no client calls, I'm like, fuck yeah. Because I know for a fact I'm committed, and the day after I'll do the work. Like, I know I will always go back when I need to. So I know I can switch off because I have already set myself up, and I see all of that as enough already. So I know that I can switch off because nothing bad is going to happen, and that actually it may even be more favorable for how I feel, how I operate, and what kind of client results I receive, or inquiries I receive off the back of that.
And that is so important, like literally switching off to just take off those days. I can't talk, to take off those days and those times spontaneously as well, where just be like, let's live life. Because that recharges you, that gives you energy so you can go for longer in your business game. Business is not just like an overnight kind of thing. It does take a couple of years. And once you've built it, you've got to maintain it. So this is how you do it, by taking the ownership, by trusting yourself, by having your own back, by knowing that you will go back to the work. Absolutely love this. We are already getting to the last bit of this podcast. If you're ready for a fire round of questions, Marcy.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Before we do so, please tell me a number between 1 and 10.
8.
Okay, so you will be getting 8 questions.
Okay.
You ready?
I hope so.
Okay, so you can answer these questions with one word or short sentence only. Okay. So first one, what is the Marcy way of living and leading your best life?
Simplicity and flow.
Such good ones. When shit hits the fan, what do you tell yourself to get through it? Scream. Silent scream.
I talk to God. I'm like, God, shit's hitting the fan. Help a girl out here.
So that's when you basically give the responsibility, or like, this universe, this is your part.
Yeah.
Love that. What is your key habit for success?
Key habit for success. Stillness, quiet, receiving, being, processing.
What is your favorite book that you would recommend to everyone?
I have a million, honestly, a million. But the first thing that's come in is a book called Untamed by Glennon Doyle, I believe she's called. I've read it about 3 times, and that also speaks volumes. Oh my God. Just read it. That's all I'm going to say.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it yet. So this is now a good reminder for me to read it. What is a word or expression that you say all the time?
Play.
Ooh. What is a theme song of your life?
That's so hard.
Or anyone that's coming as a download right now that you feel like this is the one I need to share?
There is this Polish song by these two rappers I really love. One of them has the same birthday as me.
Ooh.
Um, it translates to 1 in 100, and it's basically meant to be like a funny love song of like you're 1 in 100 because it's a really small town. And it's quite a recent song, and I've not stopped listening to it for weeks.
Ooh.
And it feels very relevant because I'm in my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
Things are interesting, and it's a small town.
I love that. That really fits so well then, especially if you share the birthday with one of them.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Oh. Okay, 2 more questions. What is your main takeaway from this episode?
One is main to be concerned. There's so many. Well, huge one is actually that I wish we could talk for like 5 more hours because I feel like we've not even scratched the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And just how much I love this work, but I'm like, there's still so much more that we have to talk about. That's what I'm coming away with.
I love that. I feel the same. I'm like, oh, why is there a time limit? Can we not just do a 5-hour episode? Maybe that just means you need to come back. You need to come back. We need to do this again.
Happily.
Last question. What is one thing that you want to unlearn?
That I want to. When I'm in Poland, I'm like, I've never spoken about this in a business situation, but I run a program activating authenticity. So sometimes when I'm like, fuck, I'm just going to do it, I say to myself, fuck it, activating authenticity, or like AA. When I'm in Poland, I smoke cigs, and I'm quite a health freak,
Mm-hmm.
but so I still do the health freak things, but it's just something about Poland that has me smoking cigs. Like it's just, I don't know. I'm not even on a holiday here, but I'm just living here for the time being, and I'm like, yeah, cigarettes. So I actually want to unlearn that because there's patterns of addiction
Mm-hmm.
over a course of my life, and that is one that still kicks my ass a little.
It is a tough one. I do appreciate that it's a tough one. It's not as easy. I have to say, like, I'm so impressed by my boyfriend who, from one day to the next, he just stopped when he met me. And I've never asked him. I've never asked him to, but he managed, and he hasn't smoked since. So I'm just like, what is your secret?
I do that. The moment I leave Poland, I literally don't smoke.
That's
And then I
crazy.
arrive and I'm like, cigarette.
What is it about Poland that wants to makes you want to smoke?
Yeah, I have no idea. Like, and I actually enjoy it, and I think that's the issue.
Mm.
And like, I think it's really an association thing.
Yeah, that could very likely be. Thank you so much, Marcy, for coming onto the podcast today. This was so much fun. As you said, like I felt like we only scratched the surface. So I know there's so much more we could dive into. This was such great energy as well. It was just so like easy flowing. So big kudos to you for just showing up, being yourself, sharing your magic. To all the listeners, where can they, oh no, the other way around. For the listeners, so they know where they can find you, where can they find you?
Yep. On Instagram and Threads, Marcy's.magic.
Amazing. I will obviously also put all the links into the description box below. And with that, I shall see everyone next week with a new episode. Bye. Have to bring our cat, Chloe, to the vet. She is in this room, so she might pop up.
I hope so.
If she wants attention. She had to get 4 teeth pulled out.
That's a lot. Oh my God.